Well, I started riding, the first time I ever rode was dirt bikes when Ben and I first got married. And it was in 1966, but they were just little 50cc Hondas. And first time I rode, when he taught me how to ride, first thing I did was hit a tree. And then I got pretty good at it. But then I didn't ride again until 1993. And Ben had just won the first Senate race in 1992, and so unbeknown to our daughter and myself, bought us a sporty 1200, and then we both went up and took the rider safety class in Denver, and we shared that bike. And of course my daughter, who was, I think she must have been about 19 or 20 at that time, she took to it like a duck in water. I mean, no intimidation, no anything, but I was totally intimidated by it to start with, because there was so much power compared to what those little dirt bikes were, and just, everything. So it took me a while before I really felt comfortable with it, and then once I did, the better you got, the more fun it was. So I think in '93, when we first got the bike, there wasn't very many women that really rode around Durango. And one day there was a group of us that were riding, and we thought, well, we should start a drill team. So we could and our whole purpose of starting the drill team was to get women interested in riding bikes. And what we wanted was a different type of a woman to ride a bike, a professional, because we were all professional women, where it wasn't stereotyped that you had to be a bodybuilder or full of tattoos and all of this. We wanted professional women to be able to ride. So we started this drill team, and definitely it really enticed women to ride, because there were a lot of our friends where the husband rode but not the wife, and they'd say, we'd never ride a bike, we'd never do it. And then the next year they'd be riding their own bikes. The political arena is the people that you're able to meet, places that you're able to go that you would never be able to do if you were just a private citizen. The bad is it's not a real family-friendly lifestyle. Ben's been in politics since 1982, and at that time our kids were in elementary schools, and he was in state politics. So you're basically a single parent. I mean, he was never home to go to any games or activities that the kids were in. So, and you definitely, I think the good thing about it is you totally become independent. Yeah, because I feel that when you're a spouse of an elected official or a movie star or whatever, you're pretty much in the background the whole time. You're the one that has to hold everything together at home and stuff. Yet the other person that's in the position, they're the ones that get the glory and they get the credit for everything. So a lot of times you feel totally left out as far as value, where without that person and being able to do it, a lot of people wouldn't get where they are. I think the main thing is that you always have to have something of your own. Like I taught. Last year was the first year I haven't taught school, so I always had my own job, my own things. We have a ranch, and we have cows, and we have horses, and I take care of them. And then we have kids, and our kids, we have a son and a daughter, and they've always been my most important thing in my life. And I think you have to feel good about yourself and be able to know that you're okay. And you definitely can't be a cleaning vine because there's nobody there to clean to.
I worked on the first campaign in '92, and me along with a couple of people that Pete Reyes and Don Sandoval and some others, too numerous to mention. We coordinated the effort in the Hispanic community for Ben, and he won. I just wanted to help, so I went to work in January of '93, so I've been here ever since. Hey, I've been around doing community work in the Chicano community since 1969. I mean, 30 years, over 30 years, and I've seen a lot of political leaders come and go, and I can honestly say, without any reservation whatsoever, Ben is the real deal. He really is. He's quite extraordinary. I love the guy. He's so human and so unlike any politician I've ever seen. He's just a good guy, a buen hombre, and he's loyal and he loves his people, and he stick with you. When the whole party switch came down, and it was pretty chaotic around the office. We were getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of angry callers and so forth, demanding this and demanding that, and we were like on conference call, from Washington, and he wanted to speak to everybody. And one of the first things he told me, he said, "Ricardo, I want you to get the word out to the Hispanic community that I haven't changed. I'm not going to change. I'm with them," and that was enough for me. That was good enough for me. And then, obviously there were some people who felt that they couldn't work, for a Republican. They moved on. I never liked Ben because of his party affiliation. I liked the man, and I still feel that way. Now, obviously, he has an affinity for motorcycles, but I think beyond that, I mean, it's ability to get the word out and do something positive, and good cause, and his ability to tell the other story. I mean, he's a champion of non-discrimination, and like he said in the interview, that discrimination comes in a lot of forms from a lot of different people, and one of those discriminatory things is about bikers. And I think, just in typical Ben fashion, he's always seems to have the best interest of the common folks in his heart. He really relates really well, I think, to just working people. And I was joking when the truckers drove their rigs into D.C. about 3 weeks ago, and I was joking with one of my guys that works in my office. I said, "I'll bet Ben's the only senator that comes out to talk to these guys." And sure enough, the next thing I know, there's Ben on TV, talking to all of the truckers who had drove into D.C. to protest or to talk about the rising cost of fuel, and I somehow or another I just knew Ben would want to try and do something if he could, So I
came from a very tough childhood, in and out of an orphanage. My mom had TB for 22 years. My dad drank awfully bad and was in and out of jail. Had trouble holding a job. When I was real young, it was not an easy lifestyle, but it wasn't an abnormal lifestyle for a lot of kids of mixed ancestry. I'm part Indian, part Anglo. I think kids that come up in those kind of homes all have tough times. So I suppose it wasn't unusual. I was in an awful lot of trouble as a youngster, running with some tough kids and stealing cars and, doing everything you would not want your youngsters to do. I think I was doing. I experimented with lots of booze. Unfortunately for me, the good Lord protected me from ever fooling around with drugs. I never did that. But I did a lot of other stuff that I'm not proud of, but I don't bother hiding it, because when you're in public office, you might as well say it, because they're going to know it anyway. Dropped out of high school, joined the Air Force, which helped straighten my life out considerably. But I was very interested in sports when I was young, contact sports, wrestling, judo, boxing, and so on. I think those kind of sports appeal to kids that have tough childhoods, because they want to lash out at somebody, and they don't want to get in a lot of trouble for it. Well, the best thing to do then is play football or something where you can hit somebody and not get in trouble. And so I got very active in the sport of judo, and I think that helped me a lot too. By the time I had finished my competitive career, I had won 3 United States championships and a gold medal in the Pan American Games, and I was a captain of the U.S. Olympic team, and I was an All-American. And that, I think, is what really helped me. And so after I retired from competition in 1964, after the 64 games, I started working with youngsters and doing a lot of things helping people that I thought didn't have the chance I had to straighten their lives out. I was doing some prison counseling in Folsom and San Quentin. I was, by then I had gone to night school and got a college degree, and so I was also teaching school, working part-time as a deputy, doing a lot of things. I also am a jeweler, make Southwest jewelry. That was part of my income. But the bikes had always been kind of a part of my life. I started riding when I was 14. My cousin's older brother, well, he was also a cousin, obviously, he came back from World War II and he bought an Army surplus WLA. They were made by Harley-Davidson for the war effort in World War II. These were old stick shift flatheads, three-speed, 45 cubic inch bikes. And he brought one back, and as a lot of veterans did, by the way, and that was the beginning of the famous incident of Hollister when veterans came back to Hollister, I'm 2 hours from Hollister in California at that time. And I went to a hill climb, and my cousin was in the hill climbs and take the fenders off and use them in competition, then ride the things home, put the light on, so on. It wasn't uncommon. In fact, they called them bobbers in those days. It was even before the chopper days. So he taught me to ride, and I got really interested in it, and so I've been riding on and off ever since. I probably had 20 motorcycles in that time, mostly American, mostly Harleys, but when I lived in Japan, as an example, you ride the bike of convenience, so I had some Japanese bikes during those years. Well, that I'm in public office now, some people think that's a form of being an actor, but when I was in Japan, there were very few ways of a foreigner making a living. One was to teach English, which I did. But the other way was to play the movies. They had a casting agency in Tokyo called Kokusai Casting, which means foreigner casting. And they were always looking for extras or bit parts or so on. So whenever we were injured to the point we couldn't practice, we'd go out on this location and get in the movies. And I never played a good guy in my life in the movies. I was always a gangster or a thug, or sometimes I was a soldier, and that was okay. But I remember one movie I got killed 3 times in the same movie as a soldier. But it was kind of fun, but they were not movies of note. Most of them were for domestic consumption. Sometimes you could make up your own lines, and they were quite an experience.
The bad and the ugly. What do you think?
The good thing about being a biker, I guess, is that there's a tremendous sense of freedom. I sometimes liken it to what Indians of olden times, before the reservation days when they were free, it must have been how they felt. They could go where they wanted. They were communal. They were nomadic. They were clannish. They referred to each other as brothers and sisters. They were into, nature as an art substance, fringe and bears and eagles and all the things you would see in the old Indian kind of lifestyle. It's very similar in the biker lifestyle. Sometimes I think bikers are the reincarnation of the ancient Indians and mountain men. But that's the good part. If you're hurt or you're down or you broke down on the highway or something, you can almost be sure that the next biker that comes along will stop and help you if you need help. The downside of being a biker is there's some negative stereotyping by people that don't understand them. There is profiling, often by law enforcement people who don't understand them. Not to say all law enforcement are wrong or bad. Many of them are just doing their job, but they get a little exuberant when they do it when it comes to bikers. And nobody likes this thing of discrimination, and being a minority on my dad's side, I know what that feels like. You talk to any Hispanic person or black person who's felt those barbs of discrimination, that's what bikers feel too. So it's no good. I don't know if there's really an ugly part.
The importance of living together.
Well, it's to communications, to get along with these other people and at the clubs and find out, different things that we can help them, or they can help us. And it's another one of them things too. When it comes down to united, you stand, and divided, you fall. If you help each other, somebody will help you. Well, I described Ben as a booze fighter. I don't know if you knew that or not. He is a booze fighter. Yeah, he is a booze fighter.
One of the most famous living booze fighters. That's right.
He's one of our very good friends and neighbors. He's a very outspoken man, everything. And he is for bikers' rights.
That's true.
Yeah, he's a people person.
That's why bikers are important to him, is because we're people too, and he recognizes that.
Well, he's a biker.
He's a biker
Yeah,
too.
he's a biker, and he realized what's going on with the coalition, riding,
Exactly.
discrimination that we all face, and everything like that.
Just like, and everything that we're out fighting for is the same thing that the average old Joe citizen is doing. You know, if he's fighting for us, he's fighting for everybody in America. You know.
Well, I belong to a lot of different groups as an honorary member. They send me these honorary memberships, and I think they just kind of like to use my name on their roster or something, which is fine. You know, I have no problem with that. But the club that I'm really a full-fledged member of and is a club called the Uglies, and they're Los Angeles-based, but they're Uglies all over the world. Pete Fonda, who's a dear friend, he was my sponsor. And he always comes to the meetings. The national meeting that is kind of a required meeting is during the Love Ride every November in Los Angeles. It's made up of kind of three types of people. There are a lot of people from either the Davidson family, or the dealers of Harley Davidson, like Glendale Harley Davidson, Oliver Shoku's a member, Tommy Perkins, who has San Francisco Harley Davidson's a member, Vinny Terranova, Rocky Mountain Harley Davidson's a member. A lot of them are dealers of Harley Davidson products, but Bill and Willie Davidson are both in it too, and so some of the families in it. There are a number of I don't know if you'd use the word celebrity type, but some of them are actors like Pete Fonda, Larry Hagman, Hoyt Axton was before he passed away, and several other people. A number of them are involved in the film industry, but they're not actors. They they do cutting or sound or something of that nature, special effects or stunts or something. But it's a great club. The members are real bikers first, and then they do whatever they else do second. I mean, they really live the lifestyle of bikers. I know there's a lot of new clubs springing up now, business people and different, and I admire them and respect all of them. But a lot of the clubs that are springing up, it's sort of a Sunday thing for them. They do it because they want to be the conversation piece on Main Street.
Concentrated a little bit in the Southwest, really, but because of Senator Campbell came out here, and trying to do a little bit of balance also of different types of riders from different backgrounds. Wanted very much to get a point of view of police officers that ride motorcycles, things that they feel on the road, how different it is or not different.
Absolutely.
The worst part of that's the best part of it, is laughing, because you watch and look at you, you go, I used to be on that side where I'd be the cop looking at the people like, I had no idea who they were. Now I got the stuff on and they're looking at me like.
I used to ride with my cousins and my brothers and everybody, and one day we stopped they were putting gas, and I was buying a cup of coffee, and the lady wouldn't wait on me. She called me a biker bitch, and she wouldn't take my money. So that's kind of shocking, and that kind of started me a little bit more to get into what people think, and how do other people get rejected.
Well, we understand.
Yeah.
We understand she wouldn't take your money, but did you get the coffee?
Well, I took the coffee. I paid for it. I wanted coffee.
Some places they take your colors off before you go in, like it's a gang thing.
The club is, like I said, rich with tradition and history. A lot of people think it's a club that's against drinking booze. It's quite the opposite. We like to say that we're a drinking club with a motorcycle problem. It's a lot different than the policeman in a car. His duties and functions are a lot different. They don't handle routine calls. They primarily are the ones out there doing the aggressive traffic enforcement. But more than that, they are involved in just about every special event that their particular agency would be responsible for. Presidential motorcades are the first thing that come to mind. They are very, very proficient in having dignitary escorts through heavily congested urban environments, security for dignitaries, security for sports teams such as soccer teams during the Olympics, and just the ability to saturate an area very, very quickly in the event of some sort of unrest. Well, I think it's just the traditional. The first thing is the uniform, and associated with the fact that they're not surrounded by anything. They're out there on a big shiny motorcycle. They rumble up when they come to an intersection. They rumble up. People look at them. They see the boots. They see the shiny leather. the Ray-Ban sunglasses and the helmet. It's just the image of the cop that most people have from childhood.
So once a year in this Mid-Atlantic region, we have what we call motorcycle competition. We used to call it a rodeo, but now we call it a motorcycle skills competition, where each year we all get together and we set up courses, and we ride those courses, and each person is giving a limited amount of time to complete a course. You're also given scores, and in the end of the day we tabulate all the scores and all the times, and then we come up with the overall winner. And in that way we keep all the riders sharp. It's like I said, it's a skills competition, but it also keeps us sharp and enhances our riding skills. So along with having a good time and also making camaraderie among other police departments, it's a learning situation. So it's basically in-service training as well as having a good time.
From my perspective, the single biggest thing that they ought to be worried about is class discrimination, because they are discriminated against. There are a number of states now that have passed laws at the insistence of bikers, at the lobbying of bikers, where they be included in the anti-discrimination legislation just as handicapped people are. And I think that's good. That's not nationwide yet, however, but that's one of the big issues. Some of the other ones that get a lot of attention are, bikers are kind of free spirits. If they want to do certain things, like wear a helmet, they want to do it because they want to, not because some form of government makes them do it. And so that's an issue that comes up quite often. They don't want government compelling them to dress a certain way or be a certain way. Most bikers tend to be very strong Second Amendment types, as you probably know. That is that we believe the Second Amendment gives us a right to bear arms in the United States, and we don't want people eroding that right. Most bikers also are very strong supporters of the military, as you probably know, because it was really the military guys that came back from World War II that started the biker lifestyle. That's where the leather comes from. They wore leather, the pilots did. They wore leather jackets and leather caps, and they wore patches. As if you look at all the pilots from World War II, they were really big into patches and seals and so on. Well, modern day biker, that's where it all comes from, and so you can see the strong military presence. Legally, people that have business establishments cannot discriminate based on dress. That means if you came and you were wearing a patch, say you're from a club, and you came in, the guy said, no patches allowed here. If you wanted to take that to court, under most courts, you can win. The problem is most bikers don't want to go through that fight. They don't want to go through that hassle and get the expense of an attorney and all that business. But those things are already covered in most anti-discrimination laws. They can't discriminate you based on how you're dressed. Now, obviously, if you come into a restaurant that's a nice restaurant, that's a coat and tie restaurant, you came in just in a bathing suit, they would have something to say about that. And they're probably right. Establishments that let bikers come in only if they don't have patches on, they are in violation of most laws that I know, and certainly in violation of the First Amendment of the Constitution, too, which is freedom of speech. But you have to test that in court if you don't like it, and that's where the hang-up is, because most people don't test it in court. You've got to have some kind of order within a system, and that's what government's about, creating some kind of an order. But there are people within every government that believe order includes government's mandating of how you live your life. And so you've always got these guys at every level of government, state, local, federal, international, whatever, that feel it's their God-given duty, in fact, God-mandated duty, to determine how you live your life. I think it's bunk, as most bikers do, but that's what you face, and that's what you've got to fight against all the time, or they will take away your rights, no doubt about it. Every level of government tends to be moving towards taking away individual freedoms. I went to San Jose State, just down the road a little ways. When I was in college, we were following the motocross. It used to be called scrambles, but the motocross circuit. So we were riding British bikes more often than we were American bikes in those years. But I knew of the red and white even then. And as they began to expand, there was some of them got in some trouble, as everybody knows. Sonny did some time. When I came back from the Olympic Games, did some counseling in Folsom Prison, and Sonny had done some time there, as you probably know, and then he was transferred to Arizona. But I had never really known Sonny before I got involved through his attorney after Sonny had served a sentence, paid his dues, and therefore, in my view, should have been free to do what he wanted again, as long as it was legal. And his attorney got a hold of me and said that he was having trouble traveling, trying to make a living because he wanted to get back into buying and selling motorcycles and building bikes, but the restrictions on his probation were that he just had to stay close to home. He couldn't do it. So I wrote to the judge that was reviewing the case, and I asked him to give Sonny a chance and told him about my own childhood of being in trouble, and that I thought Sonny had a lot of respect in a lot of circles and was in every sense a leader in a lot of respect too. And so the judge changed the restrictions on Sonny's travel, and Sonny since then has been traveling all over the place, all over the country. I was invited, in fact, not long after that by Sonny to come out to California to the sort of coming out party that he was having. I was in California that same weekend anyway, so I said, oh, sure, I'll be glad to come by. So I did go by and said hi, paid my respects, and had a great time, saw a lot of old friends. In fact, I saw a couple of youngsters when I was teaching high school. They were in the school where I was teaching, and they are now Hells Angels, by the way, in Sacramento, California. So I had a great time. But the next day, the Denver Post had a huge headline, Easy Rider Senator Helps Hells Angels, and they did a job on me. Of course, Sonny and anybody that's around the bikes is used to having a job done on them because the press just is, the press is just outrageous when it comes to negative stereotyping themselves. They write more, frankly, if I can use the word bullshit, about bikers than you can ever imagine that it's not true. It's just been in the last few years, I think, that they've also written some of the good things that bikers do. But historically, bikers have an image problem because of all of the movies that came out during the 50s and 60s. Every one of them was a negative movie. Probably a dozen of them used the word hell or angel in the movie, and almost all of them had the words rape, pillage, murder, burn, kill, something also in the title of the movie. And they were rotten B movies. Interestingly enough, some of the most famous actors in America, like Jack Nicholson and Bruce Dern and Pete Fonda, they were in some of those early B movies because it was the only jobs they could get. They were very inexpensive movies. Some of our most famous people in Hollywood started their careers in those B movies. The downside was it left a bad taste in image in all of America about bikers. It simply isn't true.
The police stopped some Canadian members and had them on the ground with shotguns, saying they were looking for, they thought they had a Hells Angel that was wanted for murder there, which was not true, but that came on the paper. It also said they had stopped me being the national or international leader of the club and wrote me a traffic violation, and neither was true. And they admitted it later that they lied. And it was the police that lied to the news. Not the news lying to the public, but the police lied to the news. I guess they felt they had to do something to justify the amount of police there. There was an old lady there that got stopped by a Utah state policeman, and there was also a Missoula policeman at the scene. And the lady was telling, I don't remember the guy's name, but she's telling him, George, why couldn't you write me the ticket? You know, I've known you all your life. Why do you have to have a Utah policeman? If I violated the law, why can't you write the ticket? And, of course, also 60 people that lived in the town were arrested for various infractions of the law in protest of the way they were treating us. The book signings are all basically the same thing. Once you get started, you just sit down and it's like nuts. You know, people just keep coming and coming, and they've been really, really good. I was told by the book company if we sold 50 to 80 books at a book signing, we would do wonderful. And we've sold probably anywhere from 250 to 1,500 at a signing, and it's just totally nuts. The book signing in Durango speed up a little bit and get in when we got there. It seemed like there was 250 people standing in line waiting when we showed up. I support your project. It don't cost me nothing. And, you know, you seem like a nice person. You're trying to do a good documentary on motorcyclists. I think that that's a good project and it ought to be out there. So myself and some of the club members of the club I belong to have done what they could do to help you do it.
You know, there's 535 elected officials in Washington. I'm just one of the 535. So I can't fix everything for everybody. It's just not in the realm of possibility that I can, do everything for everybody. As an example, after I helped Sonny, my gosh, I just got a flood of letters from people that were in prison, that were in trouble and so on, asking me to write letters of recommendation to get them out to do this and that. I can't do it. It's physically impossible to do that. We don't have the authority to overrule courts or to, intervene when before decisions are rendered, things of that nature. But I think that if I've done anything, I've been sort of a conduit for their concerns. So I've been able to carry the concerns to Washington. And from the other end of the spectrum, my colleagues in the U.S. Senate, they know I ride, they know I'm a biker. So more often than not now, when something dealing with motorcycles comes up, whether it deals with insurance or gas prices or what, you name it, a lot of them will come to me and they'll say, what do you think about this? How's this going to affect people? When they wouldn't have even thought of it before that. If anything, I think that's probably where I've been the most helpful. Now, most people go through rider safety courses, and most states have these courses. They're sponsored in most states by the state themselves or by some organization like a BAID or the Motorcycle Rights Foundation or something of that nature. I took one of those courses, and I'd been riding my whole life, and I was amazed to find out I was doing some things wrong. For instance, not turning with the leaning into the curve. If you lean into the curve, you're supposed to look ahead to see what's coming kind of around the curve. I didn't think about that so much, and I don't think I was doing that properly all the years I was riding. So, it just goes to show you can teach an old dog new tricks, and if it's a safety trick, it helps you stay alive. If you look at the absolute statistics, every state that has these rider safety training courses has a lower rate of accidents than those who do not. The states with the rider safety courses even have lower rate of deaths or head injuries than the states with helmet laws that do not have rider education, which really debunks this helmet theory about if you wear a helmet somehow you're going to be safer. I rode for 50 years before I had my first wreck, and I had a first wreck just less than 4 years ago. Broke my arm in 8 places, in fact, and it was a real honest-to-God wreck. It was partly because of the highway condition. There was some gravel that had spilled on the highway because a gravel truck did not tarp their load, and that's against the law. You're supposed to tarp the load, in Colorado anyway. Some gravel had spilled on the road, and I hit that gravel, and I went into a guardrail that was on the curve. I don't know what would have happened if I'd missed that guardrail. Maybe I would have been hurt worse or less, but it probably wouldn't have been the same. But I ended up being in the hospital for a while, and the total cost of that wreck, counting me and the hospital and the bike rebuilding and so on, was a $45,000 wreck. So they're darn expensive, and I don't want to do one of those again. Besides that, it hurt like hell. But it's something you have to put up with. But I know that there are ways of making highways safer, and I think generally highway engineers are trying to do that. Sometimes they don't factor in how it's going to affect bikes. HOV lanes as an example. A lot of times they'll make HOV lanes for cars of 2 or more passengers to 3 and more, and they'll make some guy on a bike stay in the slow traffic and burn up his engine from the heat. Some states are very progressive, like Virginia as an example. They allow bikes to use HOV lanes, and so that's good. But that doesn't come by accident. That comes because the bikers themselves have gotten active and organized and are determined to have a voice in their state legislatures. And that's why I give so many talks about not just sitting on their cans, but getting active. Don't let somebody else do it for you or take it for granted that your rights are protected. You've got to protect them. I think what has happened is the bikes have become a common denominator for people that want some freedom. We're all living uptight lifestyles, and whether you're in business or in politics or what, our lifestyle is more and more stressful all along. I think a lot of people see the bikes as a form of therapy, as I do. And the nice thing is when you go to those rallies, here you see all these people, they're all dressed in black or in T-shirts or whatever, but you don't know if one is a corporate executive or one's a U.S. senator or one's just out of jail or what. One's a housewife or a farmer. The common denominator is the bikes. And nobody talks about their profession or their background or anything of that nature. They only talk about, carburetors or belts versus chain drives or paint jobs or something of that nature. And they all have a great time together, where in their professional lifestyle, they might not even talk to each other or see each other. It would be so different. That's what the bikes really mean to a lot of people too, is that ability, that bridge to other people. Federal regulations dealing with emission controls, safety, and so on, if we're not very careful, we're going to see those almost mandate, if not drive, the design of motorcycles and the type of engine we have. I don't like to see that myself, but that's already happened in Europe. And one thing you can be sure of, a lot of the legislation that starts in the European countries that tend to be much more communal than we are, tends to work its way over here. You'll see it happen in the parliaments of Europe, and in a few years some damn fool in this country will introduce the same thing, requiring you to wear certain things when you ride, or things of that nature. There's some places in Europe now, as an example, when you buy a motorcycle, you can't change anything to a non-government approved aftermarket part unless you get government approval. Even the tires have to be the same kind of tires that came on the bike. You can increase the displacement, or put strokers and all the things that we take for granted that we can do. Many European countries can't do it. And if we're not careful, that kind of threat is going to work its way to the United States, I think. Common as dirt. I mean, many of the people in the Senate come from very well-to-do backgrounds. You probably know that almost a third of them are millionaires. They came from money. They came from educated families that were very well-to-do. Most of them did. Probably a fifth of them are attorneys in the law profession. There are very few that what I call came from the other side of the tracks, like I did, or the hard life, the tough life. A couple of them did, but not very many. I think they respect that, but that was my background. I can't change and don't want to change because even though the things I went through as a youngster were not comfortable and they weren't good, we didn't even celebrate Christmas as many times. We were so poor. But it made me tougher, and I can take a real body blow now. It doesn't bother me a bit what people say about me or do or so on. And so, the Lord gives you only the cross you can bear, and I have no problems with that. No regrets about the lifestyle I went through. I've ridden motorcycles since I was 14. Had long hair for years, dressed Western for years. I don't think because you get elected to public office, you have to drop everything in your life that you like and suddenly be stereotyped as a senator. Look like a senator, act like a senator, be senatorial. That's a bunch of baloney, I think. The thing that makes this nation great is that they're supposed to give everybody an opportunity to be themselves and me to be myself. And so the thing is, when I got elected, I didn't change. I'm still the same as I was years ago, and I still have some of the same friends. I'm not going to change all that just because I got elected. But it hasn't hurt me because I've been elected 9 times, and by the biggest margin in Colorado, I might add. So I think people accept me for the way I look and the way I act. They know I ride my bike to work when the weather's good, and they know I park it by those black limos and all that, and nobody's held it against me. The real strength of America has never been that we're all the same. In my view, the real strength of America, which separates from every other nation, is that we come from all kinds of different backgrounds. And that strength is in diversity, not in sameness. It's what's made us the leader of the world, the free world, that we recognize and tolerate and respect other people's looks, other people's lifestyle, other people's ethnic background, religious background, and way they dress or so on. That's what really makes us a strong country. If we begin to look at each other with suspicion, because of the way the other person dresses or his lifestyle, I think that is the roots of eventual destruction of freedom. We can't let that happen. And I see that happening all the time in America, sometimes in very small parts, but we do have that. We have racial prejudice in America that we ought to get rid of. We have negative stereotyping and profiling in America that we ought to get rid of. We ought to get to a country where we accept people on their terms and realize that we don't have to agree with the way they dress or lifestyle as long as we respect their right to do it.
They're supporting each other on the road. And when I ask women what's some of the hardship, and she says, well, we have to also overcome the stereotype of just being a woman, let alone being on a bike.
Dykes on bikes. One of the problems, obviously, that women face is that sometimes old-time clubs will put them in a subjective position, riding bitch, or instead of referring to them as ladies or women, they call them, they're women, they're bitch. The other thing is that women themselves, if they ride together, unfortunately, sometimes they get stereotyped as all being homosexual. Most of them are not, and if that's their lifestyle, I don't have a problem with that. But it seems to me you ought to give them a chance to let them be whatever they are. I know a number of women riding groups. In fact, in Durango, Colorado, where I live, there's an all-ladies drill team. All of them are happily married, have children. Some are grandmothers, some are professional women. But they're ladies, and they're not bitches. They're not dykes or any other stuff that sometimes women on bikes are called.
Your office is beautiful.
Well, we decorated it kind of Western because I don't like the Washington look, frankly. So we got rid of the furniture. My son made this furniture, and a lot of the decorations have been given us by different Indian people, and some of that stuff was my old Olympic days when I was on an Olympic team, and others are just mementos of the past here and there. Governor Bush of Florida just signed a repeal of the mandatory helmet law in Florida, and his brother, of course, Governor Bush of Texas, signed it a couple of years ago. So the Bushes tend to be very popular with bikers who generally hate helmets, as you probably know. In fact, I'm not sure they hate helmets as much as they hate government mandating helmets. But a lot of bikers in both Texas and Florida have worked very hard for the last few years to get the mandatory helmet law repealed. Besides that, the vast majority of accidents that motorcyclists get into are not the fault of the motorcyclist. It's some fool in a car running into them or running over them. I think it's like 4/5 of all the accidents between cars and bikes. It's the automobile that's at fault. So we need a lot of education on the part of the automobile driver to recognize a motorcyclist, because usually they use the same old tired excuse after they run over you. I didn't see him. Well, we've got to do something about educating automobile drivers about keeping an eye out for motorcyclists too. And as you know, a few years ago there was a law enacted, a federal law, and most states also have it now, that headlights are required to be on all the time on a motorcycle, unlike a car. They have to be on because they know it makes the motorcycles much more visible. But you can pass all the laws in the world. They're not worth a hill of beans unless you can enforce the laws. And the way you enforce them, of course, is through the courts. I'm in the legislative branch of government, which means we pass the legislation. But the administrative branch of government is responsible for signing it into a law and then following up with the implementation. And of course, the court system, they're the ones that define whether it's constitutional after the law's been passed or whether it is not constitutional. But the legislative branch are not the enforcement guys. We're not the cops, so to speak. The administrative branch, that's the enforcement mechanism. And so even if we pass a bill and the president signs it, if somewhere along the line in the administrative section of government, if they don't enforce it, it's pretty difficult for us to do it from the legislative branch. That's not our job. If you really believe in what you're doing, I think the majority of people will support you. I happen to believe in what I'm doing, and I do associate with bikers. Now and then I get a rotten letter to the editor, a bad editorial. But as I look back on my own political career, I've run 9 races counting primaries and won every single one of them. I've never lost a race. In fact, in the last 2 races I run as the United States Senate candidate in Colorado, I've won by the largest margin of any statewide candidate. And they know I'm a biker. I mean, they know I travel with a lot of different clubs. So bottom line is that most people recognize that when I say I'm trying to help by riding with them and make things better, they're going to support that, or they wouldn't elect me. More and more bikers are getting politically active, either by supporting a candidate or running themselves. But I have to tell them, when you run for public office, you can't run just on a biker platform. You can't show up, for instance, on a debate about child nutrition programs or education wearing a cut-off muscle shirt and your biker leathers. You can't do it because you're going to distract from what those people want to focus on, and you will simply lose a race. You have to have a broader agenda. You've got to be able to deal with senior citizens issues and Social Security. You've got to be able to deal with the national defense, and you've got to deal with environmental pollution, all those things, not just biker things. And I would recommend any biker that wants to run for office to broaden their horizons and broaden their perspective and broaden their knowledge about other issues. I mean, I fight for every biker issue that comes through the United States Senate, but I spend most of my time on all the other issues because they're much bigger than the biker issue as a single part of what I have to do. I'd point out some of the most highly recognized leaders in the world have served time in prison. Nelson Mandela was in prison over 2 decades. President Havel of Hungary was in prison. Lech Walesa of Poland was in prison. There's a number of other people that are now the leaders of their country that have been in prison. Well, if they can be the leader of their country after they've done that time, for whatever reason they did it, some say it was political, some say it was criminal, so on, but they straightened their lives out and became leaders of their country, I don't see why people can't do this in this country. The only reason they can't is because we won't let them. Our social attitude is once they're down, we keep them down. We keep our foot in their neck and we never let them up. I think that's wrong, and I won't subscribe to that. I think we should not only let them up, but help them up. This afternoon, I just concluded a hearing as the chairman of the Committee on Indian Affairs, which deals with all issues related to American Indians. There are about 435 or 40 tribes, as you probably know, and enrolled, which means legally an Indian by government definition, probably 1,300,000 American Indians. And because of the old treaties, they are pretty much dependent on American federal policy, and so they often come back to testify on different issues. And today they were testifying on the condition of roads that go through reservations and need for getting more money to fix those roads and bridges. And that room we were in really is a dedicated room. It's set up just for hearings for Indian affairs. Many of the committee rooms here in the Capitol, particularly on the Senate side, they're used for a number of things. They might have a primary reason. It might be just for energy or just for military affairs. But when the room is empty, anybody can use it. They just schedule it. But the Indian Affairs room, it's been pretty much dedicated only to Indian issues. I believe when I'm all done with public office, the person I'm going to have to face the rest of my life is me in that mirror every morning. And if you sell out your beliefs just to get votes, or if you're worried about, associating with this person or that person because you get bad publicity, that is the attitude of a coward, I think. Seems to me you've got to pick your friends that you believe in and help the ones that you can and do the best you can and go out of office full well knowing you didn't sell out, you didn't pander, you didn't suck up to somebody, you did your best, and that's what you can live with. If you test the wind every time to see if it's going to be the popular thing or not, whether you associate with this person because he has a reputation or that person because he got in trouble once, if you do that, you shouldn't even be in public office. That's not leadership, that's cowardice.
Barbara is a true artist in the sense that she gets to the heart and soul, if you will, of what people are about. Barbara is a street artist where she captures not only the moment, but she brings into effect an artistic view of the family, an artistic view of people's perception and thoughts, and most important, real life experience. What you see is what you get with Barbara Bustillos.